where the desert meets the sea. By all accounts, Kuwait shouldn't exist. It's located in one of the most demanding environments on Earth. September the 11th, 2001. In a heartbeat, the world changed. Global security came tumbling down. In Kuwait, memories of Iraq's aggression 11 years earlier were still fresh in many minds, along with the concern that September the 11th would shape public opinion of Muslims negatively.
From the first minute, we all here knew and described what happened as a very evil terrorist act, which has nothing to do with any religion whatsoever, not only Islam.
All Muslims, I think real Muslims, are against this terror, and we feel sympathetic to the United States.
The attacks also launched a US-led effort to eradicate global terrorism, starting in Afghanistan with Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda group and its supporters, the Taliban.
Even if the Americans get rid of Osama bin Laden today, there are thousands eagerly waiting to take his place.
The war against terror, as the US labeled it, has put the spotlight on Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq and its nervous neighbor Kuwait, which had been a victim of terrorism. The small Gulf state suddenly had a renewed relevance for the region's security.
I think there is a legitimate reason to worry about what is happening inside Iraq and what conceivably could happen. Now, since the end of the war, the Iraqi regime, Saddam Hussein, had broken every promise they gave. They haven't dismantled their weapons manufacturing capability. They've obstructed inspections. They've inhibited inspections. They've actually stopped inspections. And so the concern that arises is what exactly is being manufactured there and what exactly might subsequently be done with it.
The events of 9/11 have made the West question how Iraq might react and possibly get involved. In Kuwait, it's reawakened fears of vulnerability.
Some of our oil installations were bombed. Some of our oil tankers were attacked. So we've suffered ourselves, and we know what terrorism means.
Most dramatically, it's the events of August the 2nd, 1990, that Kuwaitis find hard to forget, as Iraqi forces poured over the border. For the next 7 months, under Saddam Hussein's occupation, Kuwait transformed, both mentally and physically. The House of Martyrs is one of the few memorials to the invasion left standing. The destruction here came on the eve of Kuwait's liberation, as 19 members of Al-Masila, a resistance group, took on overwhelming Iraqi forces. Miraculously, 7 survived, some of them hiding in the rubble. The house and surroundings have been preserved as a symbol of Kuwait's resilience.
In some sense, the war has not ended. Perhaps there's a cessation of military hostilities. But in some sense, the struggle continues. I mean, for example, it continues for the Kuwaiti families who have not gotten a proper accounting for those people who disappeared or were taken prisoner during the Iraqi occupation.
This will always remain unfinished business and cast a shadow over the celebration of freedom in February 1991. It's a quiet scene that these rocks now preside over. Sand has blown over much of the military stain that trailed for miles 11 years ago, as the Iraqi forces headed back to their border, driven to retreat by Western Allied forces led by the United States. Today, their military hardware and debris lies in a rusty graveyard, surrounded by the unforgiving desert. A road that once carried much tourism and commerce between Kuwait and Iraq now lies like a tarmac tombstone between the neighbors. By the time the invaders were gone, more than 700 wells had been blown up. The raging infernos that lit up the skyline proved to be one of the biggest challenges facing the small oil-dependent state. Getting these under control required the world's top oil firefighters. At the Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research, known as KISA, the massive environmental harm following the invasion is still being assessed. Testing continues to check the recovery of the soil and plant life from the deadly airborne pollution that the oil fires created.
Look at the sand. It's expanding. It's taking over.
The latest satellite technology traces the progress of the thick oil lakes, mapping the continued risk to desert and marine ecology and people due to airborne oil pollution.
11 years after the crisis, we are facing a lot of problem combating that oil.
The future environmental cost of the invasion and oil fires may have yet to reveal itself. But for now, Kuwait has fought hard to rebuild the infrastructure that snakes its way through the desert, carrying the black gold that brought this small nation its modern-day wealth. A huge public celebration commemorates the Emir's return to Kuwait in January 2002. 2001 had been a difficult year for the ruling family, as the head of state extended his stay in a London hospital. His arrival from the UK was marked with relief for those wondering how the balance of power in this oil-rich Gulf nation might shift. Power is a political balancing act in Kuwait. The umbrella of democracy and a strict constitution implemented in 1961 cover all of those in power. That's to say the ruling family, a handful of wealthy merchant families, and a growing number of independent power brokers. But there's still a long way to go, according to those who want something closer to a Western-style democracy.
I think we are still developing socially. We have still a tribal structure. We have also religious factions. So it's not the party system which is predominant. It's mostly these social relationships, tribe, family, social, religious faction, which is of course not what you would like to have in a full democracy based on issues, on ideas, on programs. We haven't reached fully that.
Tradition guides Kuwait's political ideology in the form of diwanirs, or open houses, which also maintain the bastion of male rule. Although the gatherings appear largely informal, they're the source of much backdoor policy making. More than 3 centuries ago, as Kuwait became a thriving trade center, diwanirs served as regular gatherings for merchants to do business and discuss strategies in an informal manner. Diwanirs also served to bring members of the ruling family together regularly, keeping the bonds between them stronger. Nowadays, diwanirs also act as political clubs, where like-minded individuals can find support for one another's ideas. Young people are encouraged to keep up this tradition of gathering. And diwanirs are also a place where East and West can meet technologically, if not always ideologically.
We still don't have political parties. We still don't have the institutions. I think the consensus among the people of Kuwait is democratic, but with lots of different, probably in some cases, diverted ways of understanding democracies. And that is what we in what we call the liberal movement try to understand democracy in its real sense.
Successful businessmen like Al-Mutawa find themselves frustrated at the interpretation of democracy in Kuwait. Parliamentary representation is mostly by independent candidates, some of whom band together for common interests. As mentioned, political parties don't exist, only political movements and coalitions, including independents.
Kuwait is a democratic country, and they believe very strongly in the right of freedom of speech, and they exercise it well and often without hesitation.
This often leads to a lot of debate and a lot of different opinions blocking true progress in a nation that totals 2.2 million. As it is, the voter base in Kuwait is very low, around 15% out of 800,000 Kuwaiti citizens. This is because the voting age is 21, and those in the military are not allowed to vote. It's important to note that women are also excluded. That's not to say they don't know how to vote. At Kuwait University, the female students seem to play the most active role when it comes to college politics, and they seem to